Charlotte gritted her teeth and leaned forward. She crouched low over the broom and let the dark swallow her whole. The track markers whipping past in streaks of cold blue magifire, the wind so loud in her ears she couldn't hear herself think. That was, as far as she was concerned, the entire point. The broom accelerated. Wind clawed at her cloak as branches flashed beneath her feet. The finish line waited ahead between two ruined watchtowers, marked by orange floating lanterns that drifted in the darkness like captive stars. She should have slowed down. Instead, she pushed harder. The broom responded eagerly, too eagerly. The scales covering the broomstick rippled beneath her fingers. Alive. Charlotte's stomach tightened. 3 months ago, the broom had been normal. 3 months ago, her grandfather had still been alive. The memory struck harder than the wind. A laugh in his workshop, the smell of cedar shavings, his rough hands carving the handle himself. "For my favorite flyer," he'd said. Now those same carved features had twisted into something impossible. The finish line rushed toward her. Golden eyes opened on the dragon-shaped head of the broom handle. The broom roared, not metaphorically, actually roared. The sound shook the night. As Charlotte shot between the towers, flames erupted from the dragon's mouth. The lanterns exploded. The race ended in chaos, and Charlotte fled before anyone could ask questions. Her grandmother was asleep when she arrived home. Charlotte crept quietly around the rear of the cottage and hid the broom in the back of the storage shed. With the broom tucked safely in its hiding place, the adrenaline faded. Grief remained. 3 months. 3 months ago, it had simply been a broom. A beautiful broom, lovingly carved from a composite shaft of ash and oak and cedar. Carved by a man who had taken 3 weeks to get the grip just right, who had muttered and measured and sanded until his hands were raw, who had presented it to her on her 15th birthday beaming with pride. Now, the broom hummed whenever she held it in her hands. And there were other changes. The scales, for instance. They had started small. 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. She'd been cleaning the broom after a race and found a patch just above the grip where the composite wood had gone dark and smooth and scaled, like the skin of a very large serpent. Black and shiny, each individual scale perhaps the size of her thumbnail, overlapping in a clean and perfect pattern that was, if she was being strictly honest with herself, beautiful. She'd scrubbed at them with a rag. They didn't come off. She'd tried a standard removal charm, the kind you used for stubborn enchantments. The broom had hummed at her, that same low note, almost reproachful, and the scales had stayed. Since then, they had spread. Not quickly, gradually, the way shadows spread when the light shifts, so you never quite catch the moment of change. And the bristles, she'd noticed this only yesterday, the bristles had begun to wind themselves together, thick, deliberate, interlocking, the way you'd braid hair if you were being very patient and very precise. The braid hung down from the bristle end of the broom like a tail. It moved sometimes, just slightly, when she wasn't looking directly at it. Now the knob her grandfather had painstakingly shaped into a sphere, it was unmistakably, undeniably, perfectly the head of a dragon with eyes the color of deep molten gold. In the dark, those eyes glowed faintly and steadily, the way embers glow in an undying hearth. Charlotte collapsed into her bed, trying to push thoughts about the broom out of her mind. She dreamed of towers, a tall stone tower on a hill, wind-scoured and old, and at the top of it, something was watching. She couldn't see what. She could only feel the gaze, patient and burning and vast. Charlotte opened her eyes to see her grandmother standing in the doorway, pale, trembling. The transformed broom lay on the floor between them. The black scales had spread farther, covering the entire shaft. The braided bristles had completed their transformation into a long, thick tail tapered to an arrowhead point. The dragon's golden eyes were open, watching. "Charlotte," her grandmother whispered, "tell me, That isn't your broom." They left before sunset. Her grandmother refused to explain. They traveled deep into the marshlands beyond the village. The air smelled of stagnant water and ancient magic. Eventually, they reached a crooked house balanced on stilts above black water. Nothing about the structure looked stable. The roof sagged. The windows leaned. The chimney bent sideways. Yet somehow, the house remained standing. Charlotte disliked it immediately. The old woman who answered the door was worse. Her hair looked like tangled spider silk. Her eyes were different colors, one blue, one silver, both far too sharp. The old woman glanced at Charlotte, then at the broom, then sighed heavily. "Oh dear." The old woman led them inside. The house was cluttered with strange artifacts, jars filled with glowing insects, portraits whose painted subjects blinked occasionally, a grandfather clock that ran backward. The old woman laid the broom across her table. The dragon's glowing eyes immediately locked onto Charlotte. The old woman noticed. Her expression darkened. "When did the changes begin?" Charlotte began to explain. The scales, the tail, the eyes, the fire. With every detail, the old woman's face grew grimmer. When Charlotte finished, silence filled the room. Finally, the old woman spoke. "This concerns your grandfather." Charlotte's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" The old woman folded her hands. "Tell me, was his death unexpected?" Charlotte nodded. "Very. And did he love you?" The question seemed ridiculous. "Of course he did." The old woman closed her eyes. "Then I'm afraid I know exactly what's happening." The old woman then described something few living people knew. When a person dies, their soul journeys to a place called the Tower of Witness, a tower so tall that all things can be seen from its highest balcony. From there, every soul is given one final choice. They must look upon everyone they loved, everyone they must leave behind. Then they must trust that the universe will keep their loved ones safe, trust that those they cherish will find joy again, trust enough to let go. If they succeed, the gates of no return will open. Beyond those gates lies whatever waits after death. Peace, rebirth, heaven. No living person knows, but the soul will pass onward, its journey at an end. Charlotte listened in silence. The old woman's voice softened. Not every soul can do it. Some souls continue watching, days, months, years, unable to release their grip on the world. The old woman called it the Mesimera fever, a spiritual sickness, a virus of the soul. It begins with concern, then obsession, then terror. The soul becomes convinced that disaster will strike the people they left behind, that only they can prevent it, that leaving would be unforgivable. The fever would burn hotter, stronger. Eventually, something would change, something terrible. "There are two possible outcomes," the old woman said. "If the deceased created a magical object and gifted it to someone they loved," her eyes drifted toward the broom. "That object becomes a tether." Charlotte felt her stomach drop. The fevered soul reaches through it. The dragon eyes blinked. The object's magic becomes corrupted. A scale shifted along the broomstick. The soul and object begin fusing together. The braided tail twitched. And eventually, the old woman looked directly at Charlotte. "A dragon is born." The room fell silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Charlotte stared at the broom. The broom stared back. "And the second outcome?" she finally asked. The old woman hesitated. "That is worse." She explained that not every person leaves behind a magical creation. Without a tether, the Mesimera fever consumes the soul itself, slowly, endlessly. The soul remains trapped in the tower, watching, waiting, worrying, unable to leave, unable to help, unable to rest. The old woman rose from her chair and approached the window. Outside, darkness had settled over the marsh. "You know the old stories," she said. "Dragons guarding treasure." Charlotte nodded. The old woman smiled sadly. "Only half true." Lightning flashed beyond the distant horizon. For a brief moment, her mismatched eyes reflected silver fire. "Dragons never cared about gold." Another flash illuminated the room. "Never cared about jewels." Her gaze shifted to Charlotte. "They guard what they loved." Charlotte felt a knot form in her throat. The old woman looked toward the ceiling as if listening to something very far away. "When the dragon finishes forming, your grandfather's fear will become stronger than his reason. He will see danger everywhere." The dragon broom's eyes burned, still staring at Charlotte. "When the transformation is complete, your broom will be a devastating behemoth." A low growl emerged from the mouth of the dragon. The sound vibrated through the table. The dragon eyes never left Charlotte. "You must reach him before then. You must show him that you will be all right and convince him to trust." The dragon's tail coiled. "You must help him release his grip on this world, because if he cannot cross beyond the Tower of Witness, then eventually he will fully incarnate. And once that happens..." Charlotte looked down at the broom her grandfather had carved, the broom that was becoming something ancient and terrible. "If you fail, Charlotte, your grandfather will save you from every danger that exists, until you are the safest person in existence, safe and completely alone in a prison of flame and ashes." Thanks for watching, and if you'd like another original story inspired by a random prompt, make sure to return again soon.